Okay, for my interview, I interviewed a hard of hearing student who uses hearing aids. The type of systems the student used were auditory, verbal, and total communication. This student did attend an all-hearing school. However, this hearing school did have a special program specifically for deaf and hard of hearing students. This student attended this program from pre-kindergarten all the way up to first grade. Some of the methods that were used in this program for the students were speech practice, pictures, amplification, and lip reading. So I asked the student a little bit more about these methods. I asked the student to describe and explain them a little bit more. And I wanted to kind of relate those to what I had learned throughout this semester and see if they were kind of the same. For speech practice, the student described that the teacher would cover his or her lips and then have the student repeat the word. Another technique that the teachers used was that they would have the students put their hands on their throat to feel the vibrations and feel the sound coming out of their voice box. And then communication was probably the most important part. They did spend a little time on reading and writing, but for the most part, this program was based on communication. They did not learn complex English. Another speech practice that the students used was that the teachers would record the student's voice and then play it back for the student so that they could hear their own voice and hear what they sound like and hear if they're pronouncing the sounds and words correctly. For videos or pictures, they watched videos and then afterwards they would write the words that were discussed in the video to see if they heard them properly and see if they could write them down close to what was discussed in the video. Students were also shown pictures. They were either told what the word is or they were asked what the word is. So at the beginning, this teacher would say, "What is this picture?" And then she would say, "Airplane." And they'd go on and they'd do other things, and then later on they would come back to that and say, "What is this picture?" And they would ask the student to answer this time, and they would expect the student to say airplane. So they were relating words to pictures so that when they would go out into the real world, they would have something to relate to. Okay, some more methods that this student grew up with was amplification. First mode of amplification this student experienced were hearing aids. This student received their hearing aids approximately at the age of 3. They weren't very strong, so while the student was in the classroom, the teacher did wear a microphone, and then the student had an earpiece transmitter to amplify the sound. Then there was lip reading. Although lip reading was not required, it did follow this student's learning process. Since the student was hard of hearing, if the student missed the full word, he would depend on lips to kind of put those two together and put the lip reading and the sound together to figure out the word. Although the person that I interviewed does not know sign language, some of the students that this person had class with did communicate with some signs of sign language, with some sort of sign language. So although it wasn't taught or pressured to be learning sign language, it was around the student did see it but didn't really learn it. So in about 2nd grade, the student was mainstreamed. The speech was still a little bit behind, so there was a speech therapist that did assist my interviewee from 2nd grade to 5th grade. When the student was mainstreamed, he wasn't very comfortable, he didn't like it, because the school wasn't very supportive. They did suggest to the parents that they should hold the student back, and the student also felt not included because there wasn't that attention as the previous school or program the student had attended. The speech therapist, however, was there helpful, but the school was not once the student was mainstreamed. As far as getting into the hearing community, back then the student was not comfortable, sad, depressed, and now that speech is better, voicing is better, understanding, reading, and writing is better, the student does feel a lot more comfortable with the hearing community and gets along just fine. This student actually is going for their master's degree, so good for them. Okay, the other person I interviewed was the student's parent. The child was at the beginning behind, not learning such words as toilet, outside, inside, sit, eat, drink, stuff like that, because they did not know there was a hearing loss present. So at the age of 3, the child was given hearing aids and placed in a program a few years later, mostly for auditory, verbal, and with some total communication approach. Since the child was not profoundly deaf, the parents decided to take advantage of what hearing the child did have and send the child to an oral program. They felt that that was best for their child and how they could start to begin communication with their child. They did like the program that the child attended from preschool to 1st grade, and they were comfortable with the systems that that program used. The program was supportive, they answered their questions, they were helpful, and they did see an improvement in their child's communication skills. Okay, so here is my bibliography. Basically and overall, all of these methods have, a good intentions, although some of them may not be the best, and some definitely depend on the person. All these have the best intentions, and all of what that intention is to help a student understand, become more comfortable with their life inside and outside of the classroom, help them to improve their reading, writing, and communication, whether it be with hearing or deaf. They all have good intentions. There's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on the student. And that is the conclusion of communication systems used by deaf and hard of hearing.